I still remember the exact moment my life split into before and after. It was a Thursday evening, 11:47 p.m., and I was sitting on my worn couch in my studio apartment in Portland, staring at the lottery numbers on my laptop screen, while the rain hammered against the windows like it was trying to break in. My name is Cassandra Wilson, and after 15 years of being the family's unofficial ATM machine, I was about to discover exactly what my blood was worth. The apartment smelled of instant ramen and the lavender candle Charlotte had given me for my 34th birthday last week, the only gift I'd received. The radiator clanged its familiar rhythm, a metallic heartbeat that had become the soundtrack to my exhaustion. I just finished another 60-hour week at Morrison Associates, a small marketing firm where I worked as their sole accountant, drowning in spreadsheets and tax forms that blurred together until numbers lost all meaning. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the familiar burn of too much screen time, and reached for my lottery ticket. It was my Thursday ritual, one small act of hope in a life that felt increasingly hopeless. $5 a week for a dream. Some people had therapy, I had Powerball. The numbers stared back at me from the crumpled paper. 0714 23 38 41, Powerball 19. My birthday, my parents' anniversary before the divorce, Charlotte's lucky number, my grandmother's age when she died, and the date I graduated college. Sentimental choices from a sentimental fool. The first number matched, then the second. My heart started doing something strange in my chest, like a bird suddenly remembering it had wings. Third, fourth, fifth. My hands trembled as I refreshed the page. The numbers didn't change. I checked another site, then another. Then I threw up in the kitchen sink, $47 million. The ticket shook in my hand like a living thing. I set it down carefully on the coffee table, afraid it might spontaneously combust if I held it too long. The rain outside seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. I sat there until dawn, watching the ticket like it might run away, my mind racing through 1,000 scenarios. By the time the sun fought its way through Portland's perpetual cloud cover, painting my apartment in weak gray light, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to tell anyone, not yet. You see, my family had a particular talent for making me feel simultaneously needed and worthless. I'd been lending money since I got my first job at 16. 20 here, 50 there, sometimes hundreds I couldn't afford. Family helps family, my mother would say, usually right before asking for another loan she'd never repay. Blood is thicker than water, my father would add, though his blood had been thin enough when he walked out on us. But now, sitting with $47 million burning a hole through my coffee table, I wondered, what was my value to them really? Was I family or was I just a convenience? There was only one way to find out. The plan formed in my mind like a photograph developing in slow motion. I would test them, all of them. I would go to each family member with a story of desperate need, and I would see who would help when the tables were turned. It was manipulative. It was probably wrong. But after years of being bled dry, one guilt trip at a time, I needed to know who actually gave a damn about Cassandra the person, not Cassandra the wallet. I called in sick to work, the first time in 3 years. Then I called Marcus Brandenburg, an attorney who specialized in lottery winnings and trust funds. I'd Googled how to claim lottery winnings anonymously Oregon so many times that morning that I was probably on some kind of watch list. Marcus's office was in one of those gleaming downtown towers that made you feel poor just walking through the lobby. Everything was marble and chrome and quiet money. His handshake was firm, his suit cost more than my car, and his smile was the practiced warmth of someone who'd seen every possible human reaction to sudden wealth. "Ms. Wilson," he said, settling behind a desk that could have doubled as a landing pad. $47 million. That's life-changing money. That's what I'm afraid of, I admitted. He nodded like he'd heard this before. Oregon doesn't allow anonymous claims, but there are ways around it. We can establish a blind trust, claim the winnings through an LLC. Your name never has to appear in the papers. How long do I have? 1 year from the draw date. But I wouldn't wait. These things have a way of leaking. I thought of my family, of their supernatural ability to smell money like sharks sensing blood in the water. Set it up, but I need a few weeks first. He raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. People who suddenly had $47 million were allowed their eccentricities. The next morning, I began my experiment. My stomach churned as I picked up my phone, the weight of my deception already sitting heavy in my chest. But then I remembered all the times I'd been asked for help. All the times I'd said yes, even when it meant eating ramen for a month. All the times my generosity had been met with expectation rather than gratitude. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through my contacts. I'd start with my mother. The phone rang 3 times before Diane Wilson answered, her voice carrying that perpetual note of mild irritation that had defined our relationship since I was old enough to disappoint her. "Cassie, it's early. It was 10 a.m. Mom, I need to talk to you about something. If this is about Christmas, I already told you we're going to Warren's family this year." Warren? Husband number 3. The one with the boat and the house in Lake Oswego and the peculiar habit of forgetting his wallet whenever we went to dinner. "No, Mom. I'm in trouble." There was a pause. I could hear her lighting a cigarette. She still smoked despite swearing she'd quit. "What kind of trouble? Financial trouble. My car broke down. The transmission's completely shot. I need $3,500 or I lose my job. I can't get to work without it." The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she sighed, that particular sigh that had made me feel like a burden since childhood. "Cassie, you know things are tight right now. Warren just bought that new boat and we're renovating the kitchen. Mom, I've lent you money dozens of times. That was different. You didn't have a family to support. Besides, you're an accountant. You should have savings." My free hand curled into a fist. "So you can't help? Have you tried your father? Gregory always was better with money?" The clanging of the radiator suddenly seemed very loud. "Right. Thanks, Mom. Don't be dramatic, Cassandra. Maybe this will teach you to be more responsible with your finances." She hung up. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone mix with the rain that had started again. The woman who'd borrowed $15,000 over the years, money for divorces, for moves, for fresh starts that never quite started, couldn't spare anything when her daughter needed help. The coffee I'd made earlier had gone cold. I drank it anyway, the bitterness appropriate for the moment. Outside, Portland was doing what Portland did best, existing in a state of perpetual grey dampness that matched my mood perfectly. I called my father next. Gregory Wilson had remarried well. Jennifer was a real estate agent who'd turned flipping houses into an art form. They lived in a restored Victorian in Selwood that had been featured in Sunset magazine. I knew because he'd sent me the article, not to share his joy, but to show me what success looked like. We met at a coffee shop downtown, one of those places where a simple latte cost $8 and came with a lecture about bean origins. He arrived 15 minutes late, checking his phone even as he hugged me. "Cassandra." He still said my name like it was a diagnosis. "You sounded upset on the phone." I launched into my story, watching his face shift from concern to disappointment to that particular expression of paternal judgment I knew so well. "How did you let it get this bad?" he asked when I finished. "Dad, I just need—" "You need to learn to stand on your own feet. I didn't raise you to come running for handouts. You didn't raise me at all. You left when I was 12. His jaw tightened. "That's not fair, isn't it?" He pulled out his wallet, and for a moment hope fluttered in my chest. Then he threw a 20 on the table. "For the coffee. I have to go. Jennifer's showing a house." He stood straightening his jacket. "You're 34, Cassandra. It's time to act like it." I watched him leave, his shoulders set in that rigid line that meant he'd already forgotten this conversation. The $20 sat on the table between us like an insult. The barista, a girl with purple hair and kind eyes, refilled my coffee without me asking. "Rough day?" "Rough life," I said, then laughed because what else could I do? My sister Lisa was next. We met at her house in Beaverton, a suburban palace with a 3-car garage and a pool nobody used. Her kids were at school, her husband at work. She answered the door in yoga pants that cost more than my entire outfit. "Cassie, come in. I just made green juice. Want some?" It tasted like liquefied lawn clippings, but I smiled and pretended to enjoy it. We sat in her pristine kitchen, all white marble and stainless steel, and I told my story. Lisa's face cycled through expressions like she was trying on masks. "Oh, honey, that's terrible. But you know, we just bought the Tesla, and the kids' private school tuition is due, and Mark's been stressed about his bonus. Lisa, remember when you needed money for your divorce lawyer? I gave you $6,000. That was different. How?" She shifted uncomfortably. "It just was. Besides, you don't have kids. You don't understand the expenses." I wanted to scream. Instead, I finished my lawn clipping juice and left. My brother Jason didn't even return my calls. 3 messages, 2 texts, and nothing. But I saw his Instagram story that night. Bottle service at some club, making it rain with money he probably didn't have. The rejections piled up like snow in a blizzard. Aunt Heather lectured me about my life choices while sitting in the house she'd inherited from my grandmother. Cousin Tony laughed and asked if this was a joke. Uncle Richard said he would have helped, but his third wife controlled the finances now. Each conversation felt like another paper cut, individually small, but collectively excruciating. These people who'd taken my money, my time, my emotional labor for years couldn't be bothered to help when I supposedly needed it most. By the end of the week, I was exhausted. I'd been rejected by 14 family members. 14 people who shared my blood, my history, my name, and not one of them had offered genuine help. Except for Aunt Martha. Martha was my father's older sister, the black sheep of the Wilson family. She lived in a modest apartment in Southeast Portland, surviving on Social Security and the small pension from her years as a school librarian. She had diabetes, arthritis, and a heart condition that required expensive medication. She was the last person who should have been helping anyone financially. When I showed up at her door with my fabricated tale of woe, she didn't hesitate. "How much do you need, sweetheart?" $3,500. She disappeared into her bedroom and came back with an envelope. Inside was $2,000 in mixed bills, 20s, 10s, 5s, even some 1s. It looked like she'd been saving it for a long time. "This is all I have right now," she said, pressing it into my hands. "But I get my Social Security next week. I can give you another $500 then." My throat constricted. "Aunt Martha, no. Hush. You can stay here if you need to." The couch pulls out. "We'll figure this out together." I looked at this woman who barely had anything, who was offering me everything, and I broke. "I can't take this," I said, pushing the envelope back. "Don't be proud, Cassie. Family helps family." There it was, that phrase that everyone else had forgotten when it applied to me. "Aunt Martha, I have to tell you something." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "I don't really need the money. I won the lottery." She blinked. "What?" $47 million. I won it last week." She sat down heavily in her worn recliner. "Then why?" "Because I needed to know. I needed to know who would help when I had nothing to offer in return." Her face went through a series of emotions: confusion, hurt, understanding. Finally, she laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "And I was the only one?" "The only one." She shook her head. "Your family's full of fools, sweetheart. Always has been." I sat on her ancient floral couch, the one that smelled like mothballs and memories, and told her everything about the lottery, about the lawyer, about my plan to claim it anonymously, about how I'd been testing everyone, trying to find out if anyone actually cared about me and not just my usefulness. "What are you going to do now?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but I just feel empty." Martha reached over and took my hand. Her skin was paper thin, marked with age spots and memories. "Money doesn't change people, Cassie. It just reveals who they really are." "Then what does that make me?" "I lied to everyone." "It makes you someone who needed to know the truth. There's no shame in that." We sat in comfortable silence while her ancient cat Schrödinger wound around our legs. The apartment was small, cluttered with books and photographs, but it felt more like home than any of the gleaming houses I'd visited that week. "I want to buy you a house," I said suddenly. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm serious. A nice house with a garden, somewhere you can have as many cats as you want." She squeezed my hand. "I don't need a house, sweetheart. But if you want to help, there is something. Anything. There's a senior center downtown. They're always struggling for funding. A lot of lonely people go there, people whose families have forgotten them. Maybe." "Yes," I said before she could finish. "Yes, absolutely." And that's how the Martha Wilson Foundation for Senior Support was born, though it would be months before it officially existed. I spent the next 2 weeks in a strange limbo, going through the motions of my normal life while secretly planning my new one. I went to work, came home to my studio apartment, ate my instant ramen. But now, everything felt different, like I was playing a part in a play everyone else thought was real. Marcus called to say the trust was ready. The claiming process would be quick, a trip to the lottery office, some paperwork, and then the money would be mine. Or rather, it would belong to the CW Trust, a bland name for a life-changing entity. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm going to do it anyway." The night before I claimed the ticket, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window watching Portland's lights twinkle through the rain, thinking about how different everything would be. Not just the money. I'd already started looking at houses, already started planning the foundation, but the relationships. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Warren's friend needs an accountant. Could be good extra money for you. You could use it, right? I almost laughed. Even now, she was trying to manage my life, to fix the problem she wouldn't help with. I deleted the message without responding. The next morning, I put on my best suit, which wasn't saying much, and met Marcus at the lottery office. It was anticlimactic in the way that life-changing moments often are. Sign here, initial there, smile for a photo that would never be published. The clerk who processed my claim had done this before. She was professional, efficient, and kind in the way that people are when they know they're handling someone's dreams. "Congratulations, Miss Wilson," she said, handing me a ceremonial check that was just for show. The real money would be wired to the trust. "What are you going to do first?" "I'm going to disappoint my family," I said. She laughed, thinking I was joking. 3 days later, after the money had safely landed in my accounts, I called a family meeting. I told them it was important, that I had news about my situation. They all came, probably expecting me to announce bankruptcy or beg for help again. We met at my parents' old house. My mother got it in the divorce but could barely afford the upkeep. The living room looked exactly as it had when I was 12. Same brown couch, same water stain on the ceiling, same sense of everything slowly falling apart. They trickled in with their various excuses for being late. My mother with Warren, my father with Jennifer, Lisa with her husband Mark, even Jason showed up, probably hoping for free food. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole Wilson clan gathered in that shabby living room like vultures who'd heard about a death. "So," my mother said, settling into a chair with a glass of wine that was definitely not her first. "What's this about, Cassandra?" I stood in front of the fireplace that hadn't worked since 1998, looking at these people who shared my DNA but had never really shared my life. "I wanted to thank you all," I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. "Thank us?" My father looked confused. "Yes, for showing me exactly where I stand with this family." The room grew quiet except for the rain against the windows and the tick of the grandfather clock that had never told the right time. 2 weeks ago, I asked each of you for help. I told you I was in financial trouble, that I might lose my job, that I was desperate. Lisa shifted uncomfortably. Jason suddenly found his phone fascinating. Not one of you helped, not one of you offered anything real. You all had excuses, reasons why you couldn't do what I've done for you dozens of times over the years. "Now wait a minute," my mother started. "I'm not finished." My voice cut through her protest like a blade through tissue paper. "I've been the family ATM since I was 16. Loans that were never repaid, gifts that were never acknowledged, help that was expected but never reciprocated. This is ridiculous," my father said, standing. "We're not going to sit here and be lectured, then leave," I said simply. "But if you do, you'll miss the part where I tell you that I didn't really need the money. That got their attention." The room went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. "What do you mean?" Warren asked, the first time he'd ever addressed me directly. "I won the lottery. $47 million. The silence exploded into chaos, everyone talking at once, voices climbing over each other, a symphony of greed and disbelief. "You're lying," Jason said. I pulled out my phone and showed them my bank balance. Just the checking account, a casual $10 million sitting there like it was normal. The chaos turned to stunned silence. "So this was all a test?" My mother's voice was small, wounded. "Yes. That's manipulative. That's cruel. Is it? Is it crueler than taking thousands of dollars from your daughter and then refusing to help when she needs it? Is it crueler than lecturing someone about responsibility when you've never taken responsibility for anything in your life?" "We're family," Lisa said weakly. "No," I said. "We're relatives. Family shows up, family helps. Family cares about more than what they can get." "So what now?" my father asked. "You're cutting us off?" "I'm setting boundaries. I'm done being the person you call when you need something. I'm done feeling guilty for your choices. I'm done pretending that blood means anything when it's not backed by love. You can't just..." My mother started. "I can do whatever I want. That's what $47 million buys you, the ability to say no." I turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Aunt Martha? The one person who actually tried to help when she thought I needed it? She's getting everything she needs for the rest of her life. The rest of you? You're getting exactly what you gave me when I needed help. Nothing." The room erupted again, but I was already walking out. The rain had stopped, and for the first time in years, Portland's sky was actually clear. I could see stars. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. Texts, calls, voicemails. I deleted them all without reading, without listening. I'd heard everything they had to say already. The next morning, I quit my job. I gave Morrison Associates 2 weeks' notice, which was more than they deserved, but exactly what my conscience required. My boss, Richard Morrison, took it personally. You can't just leave. We need you. You need someone to do your taxes for a third of what you'd pay a real firm. That's not the same as needing me. After everything we've done for you. You mean after everything I've done for you? 60-hour weeks during tax season, no overtime, no bonuses, no raises in 3 years. His face went red. You'll never work in this town again, promise? I said, and walked out. Charlotte was the only person besides Martha who knew the truth. We sat in her apartment that night, drinking wine that didn't come from a box, and she listened to the whole story. Holy shit, Cass, that about sums it up. What are you going to do now? Whatever I want. That's the terrifying part. She raised her glass. To terrifying freedom. To terrifying freedom. Over the next few months, I rebuilt my life from the ground up. I bought a house. Nothing ostentatious, just a beautiful craftsman in the Alberta district with good bones and better light. I bought Martha her house too, despite her protests, a lovely cottage with a garden where Schrödinger and his 3 new companions could roam. The Martha Wilson Foundation became real with Charlotte as co-director. We focused on seniors living in isolation, especially those estranged from their families. It turned out there were a lot of them, people whose children had forgotten them, whose relatives had written them off, whose golden years had turned to lead. My family didn't give up easily. The attempts at reconciliation came in waves. First the anger. How dare I test them? How dare I judge them? How dare I abandon them? Then came the bargaining. Surely I could spare something. Surely blood meant something. Surely I wouldn't let them struggle while I lived in luxury. The guilt trips were the hardest. My mother's voicemails grew increasingly desperate, painting herself as the victim of a cruel daughter's manipulation. My father sent a letter through his lawyer, suggesting that I owed him for child support he'd paid. Lisa posted passive-aggressive Facebook posts about family values and forgiveness. But Aunt Martha had been right. Money hadn't changed them. It had just revealed who they'd always been. The foundation's first event was a Thanksgiving dinner for seniors who had nowhere else to go. We rented out a hotel ballroom, hired caterers, arranged transportation. 200 people came. 200 people who'd been forgotten by their families, left behind by a world that valued youth and productivity over wisdom and experience. I was standing by the dessert table, watching Martha chat with a group of women her age, when someone tapped my shoulder. It was my mother. She looked older, smaller somehow. Warren wasn't with her. You weren't invited, I said. I know. I wanted to see what you were doing with the money. Now you've seen. She looked around the room at all these elderly people laughing, eating, existing in a space where they mattered. This is because of Martha? This is because of everyone who's ever been told they're only worth what they can provide. I'm your mother. Biology doesn't make you a mother. Love does. Care does. Showing up does. She started crying then, but they felt like performative tears, the kind she'd perfected over 3 marriages and countless manipulations. I need help, Cassie. Warren left. The house is being foreclosed on. I have nowhere to go. I looked at this woman who'd given birth to me, who'd raised me in her way, who'd also taught me through her absence what kind of person I never wanted to be. The foundation has programs for seniors facing housing insecurity. You can apply like everyone else. I'm your mother. She said it like it was a magic spell, like those 2 words could undo years of neglect and exploitation. And I'm your daughter, the one you couldn't spare $3,500 for when you thought I was desperate. That was different. No, Mom, it wasn't. That's what you never understood. It was exactly the same. Security started moving toward us. Charlotte must have signaled them. But my mother was already leaving, her shoulders shaking with rage or grief, or probably both. That was the last time I saw her. The seasons changed. Portland did its Portland thing. Rain, coffee, more rain. The foundation grew. We opened a senior center, started a meal delivery program, created support groups for elderly people dealing with family estrangement. The need was bottomless, but for the first time in my life, my resources weren't. I dated a little, a teacher named David who made me laugh, a social worker named James who understood my work. But mostly I learned to be alone without being lonely, to sit with myself without needing validation from people who would never really see me. Jason reached out once, 6 months after the confrontation. He was in rehab, he said, getting clean, making amends. I know I don't deserve anything from you, he said over the phone. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For never being the brother you deserved. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Maybe someday, when I'm better, we could talk? Maybe, I said, which was more than I thought I could offer. He didn't push. That, more than anything, gave me hope that people could change. Not my mother, not my father, but maybe Jason. Maybe. A year after winning the lottery, I stood in the foundation's new building, a renovated warehouse that we'd turned into a community center. It was the grand opening, and hundreds of people had come. Not my family. They weren't invited. But my real family. Martha, Charlotte, the seniors we served, the volunteers who'd become friends. Marcus Brandenburg was there too, having become an unexpected ally in navigating the strange world of sudden wealth. Any regrets, he asked, surveying the crowd? About the money? Number about the family? I thought about it. I regret that I had to test them. I regret that they failed, but I don't regret knowing the truth. That's very Zen of you. That's very $47 million of me. He laughed. You know, most of my clients who win the lottery end up miserable. The money ruins their lives. The money didn't ruin anything. It just showed me what was already ruined. Martha rolled up in her wheelchair. Her health had gotten worse, but her spirit remained unbreakable. Cassie, dear, there's someone who wants to meet you. She introduced me to Eleanor, a 90-year-old woman whose daughter hadn't spoken to her in 5 years because of an argument about an inheritance. Martha tells me you understand, Eleanor said, her voice paper-thin but strong. I do. It hurts, doesn't it? When the people who should love you only see dollar signs, every day. But it gets better? I looked around the room, at Martha laughing with Charlotte, at David helping serve food, at all these people who'd formed a family bound by choice rather than blood. It gets different, I said, and different can be better. Eleanor nodded and squeezed my hand. Her touch was light as a butterfly, but it carried the weight of understanding. The party went on around us. Seniors dancing to music from their youth, volunteers serving food that didn't come from cans, people who'd been invisible becoming seen. It was beautiful in the way that truth is beautiful, even when it's sharp enough to cut. My phone buzzed. Another message from my mother, probably, or Lisa, or my father. I didn't check. I changed my number 3 times, but they always found the new one. The messages all said the same thing anyway. Variations on themes of guilt, manipulation, and demand. You want to know the funny thing? I said to Eleanor. What's that, dear? If any of them had helped when I asked, even $20, even just genuine concern, they'd be part of this, all of this. But they couldn't even do that. Pride is expensive, Eleanor said. It costs more than most people can afford. As the evening wound down, I helped Martha to my car. She was staying with me now, in the guest house I'd built specifically for her. She protested, of course, but I was better at stubbornness than she was at resistance. You did good today, sweetheart, she said as we drove through Portland's wet streets. We did good. No, she said firmly. This was you, the foundation, the center, all of it. I just suggested it. You did more than that. You showed me what family really means. She was quiet for a moment, watching the city lights blur past. Your mother called me yesterday. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. What did she want? To know if I could convince you to forgive her. And? I told her forgiveness isn't mine to give. I also told her that you'd already given her more than she deserved. The chance to prove she cared about you as a person, not a resource. What did she say? She hung up. We drove in comfortable silence after that, the radio playing something soft and forgettable. The rain had started again because of course it had. This was Portland. It was always raining. When we got home, I helped Martha inside and made us tea. Chamomile for her, Earl Grey for me. We sat in my kitchen, which was bigger than my entire old apartment, and didn't talk about the family we'd lost or the family we'd found. We just existed together, 2 women who'd learned that love wasn't about blood or obligation or guilt. It was about showing up. I have something for you, Martha said, pulling out a worn envelope from her purse. Martha, no more money. We've been through this. She laughed. Open it. Inside was a photograph. Old, creased, black and white. It showed a young woman standing in front of a house, smiling at the camera with a defiance that looked familiar. "That's my mother," Martha said. "Your grandmother. She died before you were born. I'd never seen a picture of her before. My father didn't keep any. She would have loved you," Martha continued. "She had the same spirit, the same refusal to accept less than she deserved. She left my father when that wasn't done, started her own business when women weren't supposed to. She taught me that family isn't about blood. Then why did you help me? When you thought I needed money." Martha smiled, that soft smile that made her eyes disappear into wrinkles. "Because you're the only one who ever helped me without being asked. Remember? 5 years ago when I was in the hospital, I remembered. She'd had a heart attack. I was the only one who visited, the only one who helped with her bills while she recovered. You didn't do it for show or guilt or because you wanted something. You did it because it was right. That's rare, Cassie. That's worth protecting." I looked at the photograph of my grandmother, this woman I'd never met but whose defiance apparently lived in my bones. I wish I'd known her. You do know her. Every time you refuse to accept less than you deserve, every time you stand up instead of backing down, every time you choose truth over comfort, that's her in you. We finished our tea and I helped Martha to the guest house. As I was leaving, she called me back. "Cassie, what you did, testing them, some people would say it was wrong. I know, I'm not one of those people. Sometimes you have to break the rules to see who's really playing the game." That night, I sat in my home office looking at the spreadsheets for the foundation. We were helping 500 seniors regularly now. 500 people who'd been forgotten, discarded, treated as burdens rather than blessings. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Cassandra Wilson?" The voice was young, nervous. "Yes, my name is Emma. I'm Jason's daughter." I sat up straighter. "I didn't know Jason had a daughter. He doesn't know I'm calling," she continued quickly. "But I found some old photos, and my mom told me about you, about what happened with the family. Emma, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for all of them. They shouldn't have treated you that way. You don't need to apologize for them. I know, but someone should. And also, my dad's doing better. The rehab really worked. He talks about you sometimes, about how he wishes he'd been different." "People can change," I said, surprising myself by believing it. "Yeah, I volunteer at a senior center in Seattle. I saw an article about your foundation. It's amazing what you're doing." "Thank you. Maybe someday I could volunteer there during summer break. I'm studying social work." I thought about it. This girl, barely out of her teens, trying to bridge a gap she hadn't created. "Send me an email," I said. "We'll see." After she hung up, I sat in the darkness of my office, thinking about cycles and patterns and the possibility of breaking both. Maybe Emma was the start of something new. Maybe the next generation could do better, or maybe not. But hope, I'd learned, was like buying a lottery ticket. Sometimes the dream was worth the $5, even if the odds were astronomical. 3 years have passed since I won the lottery. 3 years since I discovered the price of blood and the cost of truth. The foundation now operates in 3 states. Martha is still with me, though her health is fragile. Charlotte runs the day-to-day operations with an efficiency that would make my old boss weep. I still get messages from my family, less frequently now, but they come in waves, birthdays, holidays, whenever someone sees an article about the foundation. The messages range from apologetic to accusatory, but they all want the same thing: a piece of what they think they're owed. But here's the thing about winning the lottery. It doesn't just give you money. It gives you clarity. It shows you who people really are when the stakes are high and the masks come off. I didn't win because I picked the right numbers. I won because I finally learned the right lesson. That family isn't about blood or obligation or guilt. It's about showing up when it matters, helping when it's hard, and loving without conditions. The lottery gave me $47 million, but Aunt Martha? She gave me something worth more. She gave me the truth. And that's the real jackpot, not the money that changed my life, but the knowledge of who deserved to be in it. They thought they could treat me like an ATM with a pulse, dispensing money on demand while offering nothing in return. They didn't realize that every withdrawal they made without deposits was tracked, catalogued, remembered. For the first time in my life, I understood the difference between being needed and being valued. My family needed me, needed my money, my stability, my endless capacity to give. But Martha valued me, valued my company, my character, my existence beyond my usefulness. That's worth more than $47 million. That's worth everything. End of story.